Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this third module of the price ladder course, where today we're going to be going through the price ladder absorption, reloading, and iceberging. So let's take a look at what that actually means. Now, so today we're covering what is price ladder absorption. Reloading and iceberging. So you might have heard of these terms already before. Specifically, if we just take a quick look over at absorption, to put this briefly, it's basically what the word says. It's when the market soaks up a certain amount of volume. And basically what you see is the market participants that are doing the absorbing are actually passively buying or selling a large amount of contracts on the bid of the offer. So for example, before I show you an example of this, so for example, in this scenario here, this is a price ladder not currently live, just paused at the minute, just a freeze frame of the market at this level. So for example, let's just imagine that there wasn't a gap between here, there wasn't a space between here, a spread, and let's just say there were actually market participants, for the sake of argument. There's 341 contracts here, and the sellers wanted to sell into the bid here. There's 223 at the bid. Let's just say that the sellers come in and start selling 223 aggressively at market. They're basically paying at market. They sell or accept to pay at market 223 contracts. So they've sold 223 contracts, and effectively that's absorbed by the buyer. So the absorption takes place by the buyer. Just delete that. Buyer absorbs. Now, usually what you would say, you wouldn't really actually take notice of a 223 contract absorption because it's just not that much. It's something not really worthy of it, because that's typically what you see on your average bid and offers anyway. But if, let's just say, there was, 2,231, for example. So there's 2,000 contracts actually on the bid, and someone would actually sell the lot at 64s, and that effectively would be an absorption I would pay attention to, because if someone comes to market and sells 2,000 aggressively at market, and then the buyer manages to absorb those 2,000 contracts, that's effectively an absorption I want to pay attention to, because that means there's a pretty big passive buyer. I mean, likewise, you could say there's someone aggressively selling, but if that buyer doesn't move and doesn't budge and they keep selling into him and he's absorbing that volume, that means he might have more to do, more to get done. And if the sellers run out of any contracts to sell, he might start getting aggressive and going to market at the next price, the next price, the next price. And that's effectively what you might be looking for in an absorption. So in absorption, if we're just going to quickly write this out, so market participant passively, the keyword is passively, buys/sells as other market participants sell/buy at market into them. That's essentially what absorption. Now, the theory behind reloading, now, if we just take a quick look over what actually reloading means, it's a very similar concept, except reloading is particularly looking at the action of reloading the bid or the offer. So if let's just take it, for example, we had the case scenario that we had before, where again, on the offer, we have a certain amount of contracts, to say like before 341 contracts, or that looks like a 9, let's just call it 391 contracts. And then someone were to sell at market 223 contracts. Now, if they took completely those 223 contracts out, and then collectively saw the market participants build that bid up again, so refresh the bid such that it goes down to nil, someone takes them out, but somehow people keep refreshing and putting more bids at 64s, and that refreshes back up to, let's say, 300. That is what reloading is. And if someone sells again, if someone again steps in and sells 300, and then some buyers again collectively, once that's gone, they collectively build up the bid again back up to, let's say, 250. They keep adding more in the bid. Every time someone sells into them, they keep adding more. So basically, if we just had to define if we had to actually define what reloading is when one or more or many market participants refresh the bid or the offer passively as sellers/buyers trade at market into them. So let's just quickly. So when one, doesn't necessarily have to be many, but one or many market participants refresh the bid/offer passively as other market participants sell/buy that market into them. So again, very similar concept to what we saw with absorption, except the reloading is actually the action of refreshing. So as you know, some people might call this refreshing of the bids and the offers. Now, the last concept is basically, in terms of price action absorption, is basically the same as reloading, but iceberging. Now, iceberging is reloading, but it's when effectively one market participant's doing it, because you don't usually see more than one market participant actually reloading at the bid of the offer. Now, iceberging, as we went before, as an order type, it's just an order that when you put into the market, it slices the orders up, and it every time it goes past a certain threshold, it refreshes. So let's say if I have 2,000 contracts, if I had 2,000 contracts to buy here, and someone was selling into the bid here, I could split it up into 10 slices of 200 contracts. So every time someone would, hit the bid and take that out, I could refresh and put 200. So if I saw very blatantly that every time this went down to zero, someone would hit the bid, take out the 200 and put another 200 on, and then another 200 on, and then another 200 on. So every single time it's the same amount being put on, I can tell that that's an iceberg. And that very blatantly is one buyer. I mean, that is characteristic of one buyer doing the same order again and again. So what we're going to say for the iceberg, it's exactly the same as reloading, exactly the same, except it's one market participant refreshing bid/offer in slices. And they're usually equal slices. So that's essentially what price ladder absorption is and reloading. or refreshing, and the actual term iceberging is. And the next part of this module, we're actually look at the main reasons why people do absorption, and then subsequently after that, in the rest of the module, we'll be looking at identifying these absorption levels, and then actual ways we can scalp and trade around these absorption levels. And we'll take a look at some examples on the actual price ladder and see what that looks like, so you guys get a better picture of what that actually means. Thank you very much for listening. Stay tuned for the rest, guys. Bye bye.